So you mentioned earlier this concept of neuroplasticity, and then also I'm going to tie this into kind of clarifying and giving a few introspective thoughts on the nature of this psychotic break that I think I had.
Yeah.
So this timeline here, 2017, is when I say I had this shift and this sudden interest in information and starting a meditation practice. And I made like just insane strides in just changing who I am from the inside out, for the better, I believe. And the psychotic break, where it is on the timeline, is fall of 2020.
Mm-hmm.
And what I feel like happened was the nature of the initial awakening and absorbing information. I started filling, first of all, expanding the container of consciousness, so the amount of information I can hold and the depth at which I can understand it and apply it. But then filling that tank with all sorts of information. A lot of it may be conflicting, and then I have to iron out those discrepancies myself and figure out, well, what information do I feel is more right, or what's more applicable or useful to me, and blah, 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 blah. Questioning habits of mine, questioning my daily marijuana habit and putting it on pause and bringing it back and putting it on pause again. And same with things like caffeine and, bad foods and any other alcohol, anything you can think of. Really questioning these things, taking breaks, paying attention to the experience. And I kept this continuation of coming back to these things, which I started to identify as like where the weight of it, like, let's just focus on marijuana, for example. I could envision a reality where I could continue that daily habit and be fine and live a good life and even be successful.
Yeah.
But the conclusion I ultimately reached was, I have a pretty complicated, high standard for myself and what I want my future to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm fine with the bar being set up high, because I think that's the best I can do. Like, I'm trying to envision the best I could be.
Absolutely.
And I think the daily marijuana habit is going to hinder that. It's going to dampen and lessen that. It's going to slow me down on that process. I can be good and I can be great with the daily marijuana habit, but I can't be the best with it. And so I started to see every time I took it as like this intense ripple effect on my entire future existence. And I kept doing it with this cognitive dissonance, like knowing in the space of realization, this is not good, but in the space of actualization, going against it. And for, 2017 to 2020, that's about 3 years. I think the longest break I took was 2019, 9 months. But I kept coming back to it. And 2020 pandemic, things were just really kind of unraveling. The nature of a global pandemic was insane to everyone, and we're all destabilized there. The 2020 election was very destabilizing and polarizing, and just our human interactions and the conversation was just very stressful and negative, a lot of it. And I was having my own I had like 3 people in my life just die. My dad, and then my grandma, which I watched, and then I feel like then my grandpa, but this was later. And it was just, and I also felt like those first 2 deaths, I didn't process, I didn't experience what I feel like my reaction should have been to a close family member dying. Mm-hmm. And I don't know why that is, but I just feel like a lot of things that were going on, I was measuring myself to be fairly zen about, but I maybe was ignoring some deeper things that were happening.
Yeah.
And I think that whether the reasons that I think marijuana and all these other things are negatively affecting in a ripple effect my future, and then I keep coming back to them, whether my reasoning behind that is sound or not, the truth is that I believed that, and that I was going against it. And we have this cognitive dissonance here. And I think that's what it was. It was this manifestation of like, you're ruining your future every time you do this, yet you still continue to do it. And it was just a physical response was growing up of like, that's why the amygdala, I think, was just shooting off like, this is existential threat. Have a panic attack right now. Have a panic attack every time and that was what it was. I used to be someone that could rip a whole bowl of weed by myself, just rip a whole bowl pack of bong by myself and be like, yeah, give me more. Yeah. Then it was someone like, you give me a little toke of any kind of weed, I immediately go into, I'm having a heart attack.
Yeah.
And it was a month straight of me just doing that. I was like, nope, every time I do it, it's this. I have to stop. And then Joe Dispenza's thing. And then I started thinking like, well, no wonder I'm telling myself this story. And so it's like, that's why I asked this question of like, obviously there are physiological, science-oriented, objective facts about the way something like these substances affect you that you can measure, maybe subjectively and objectively, that are negative. But then there is this powerful element of the metaphysical in the story where it's like, now I'm in this place where I feel like I honestly probably could do all these things I'm addicted to and tell a really good story and power through it and maybe even still be the best version of myself. I don't know is the truth. Yeah. But I think where I'm at is I'm most interested in seeing what happens when I can eradicate these addictions. Yeah. But that was to clarify and bring in everything that we were talking. And so particularly with marijuana, and then I had a fairly heavy and common psychedelic use, and we know that these things can lend neuroplasticity. Yeah. So I think a lot of this marijuana use on top of a lot of information taking and meditation and reprogramming was with a much increased neuroplasticity if I weren't doing these things. Yeah. I think it made my ability to manipulate the story that my conscious mind was telling down to the subconscious and unconscious levels very rapidly. I think that's what where the neuroplasticity comes in for me, as I was using substances that increase neuroplasticity and I was really taking advantage of it unconsciously and unknowingly. Yeah. And I think I reap physiological negative effects of that phenomenon.